computer. That's all good.
Look at that.
There we go.
We're away. Are we recording? So what have you been up to?
So where am I now? We're just day 2 of week 8 in the lockdown. Things have been a bit more relaxed this last week, but I am here in Andorra. Andorra is a small country between France and Spain in the Pyrenees Mountains. So I've got a little training base up here, and this is where I've been hanging out since my last race.
Nice. The haircut doesn't look too bad, Tom. So you've been doing some yourself, or what's been going on there?
Yeah, I was just having a think today, actually. This is COVID cut number 1. It's just about time for number 2, I think. So.
Nice. And so you've got George Bennett for a neighbour in Andorra. You must do, Tom.
Yeah, George is just up the hill. He's probably, I think it's about 10 kilometres up to where he's living. So he's up the top end of the valley.
What's it been like for a guy? Obviously you spend most of your time on a bike out in the countryside. Cooped up for such a long time must be like a fizzed up can of Coke.
Oh, she's definitely been a roller coaster of emotions, that's for sure. Like my last race was Pyrenees. Yeah, it's like 8 weeks ago, and that was looking at a 30-hour week before it got called short. And I'd say probably my longest week since then has been like 6.5 hours. So it's turned the pan right down and put it on simmer for the last while. And we're pretty eager to get back out there.
Tom, it's been interesting. I know, like, through your career, there's been a few ups and downs, as we know, and a few, and you've had to cope with a fair bit of stuff along the way, from disappointment back in the early days, non-selection, right through to massive injuries. Like, so you've developed a fairly thick skin and been able to handle those emotions. How's that sort of been coming into this stuff?
Yeah, it's been pretty good. I have been. I only had one little wobble. I think it was about day 17. I was pretty fed up of just sitting inside. And then after that, I sort of looked at myself in the mirror and gave myself a bit of a talking to and said, right, you've got this. Yeah. It's not so bad, Yeah. I've got some underfloor heating going on up here, and got a nice little apartment set up, and the world's pretty good for as far as I'm concerned, for where I'm sitting. Compared to, especially what's going on down the road and some of the big cities like Barcelona and stuff, it's just it's a real reality check for how life's going at the moment. So, if we have to just sit on the couch and hurry up and wait for a while, then I'm able to do that.
Because I reflect back to those days after that crash, when you spent a lot of time in a hospital bed as well, didn't you, really? And that was a tough time for you mentally then as well. So is this a similar sort of thing?
Yeah, it's a couple of weeks there in the hospital bed, but like as cyclists, and probably many athletes, especially endurance athletes, will be able to relate to this, is we're pretty good at like persevering and just sort of keep pushing on, even when we're out there training, putting those miles in on the road. So it's just one of those times where the world's had to be put on pause or put on simmer for a while and just wait it out. So we're pretty good at filling in time and just taking one day at a time. I think got started saying to myself there a few weeks into it, I was like, oh, one day more is one day less until we see the end of this thing. So that dragged on for a couple of weeks before I started getting sick of saying that to myself. But you look to build a wee routine each day, and when you get into a groove of a wee routine, the days actually just fly by. Time goes pretty quick.
Like being retired, Tom. Jason's closer to that than any of us. But just going back to that injury in 2010, it was a pretty bad knee injury, wasn't it? Were there times, in that you thought, cycling might be over for you?
I certainly didn't want it to be. There was a time there where we didn't really know how bad it was, or right in the early days in the hospital there, it was like it was unclear how well it was going to be able to recover or rehab it and heal it back to what it needed to be. I guess there was times, but we put a pretty good plan in place way back then, and built back to doing the right things at the right times, and slowly build up to getting back to full fitness. So
and tough being on the other side of the world and going through that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I did learn from that was, you know, I read it all the time on the cycling news. You see an article, someone's had a big crash and done a pretty big injury, and you never expect like that's going to happen to you as an athlete. You just think, oh, it's always going to be all golden and everything's going to go right, and I'm not going to be one of those headlines. And then when it does happen, you get put right back into reality, and then that's when you work out how you've got to where your good strong support network is, and how you build back from there.
And interesting, Tom, you'll be interested. So we started our Academy Southland program. I think we're at number 16 or 17 or something. The 2 days before lockdown, so we had all the parents and stuff in, which was pretty cool. But as we're sitting there, it was amazing because events were getting cancelled right there and then. So I've got a young cyclist, young Mitchell, had Junior Worlds cancelled, rowers having Junior Worlds cancelled and stuff as it was happening. It was just a sort of pretty surreal, really. So I guess thinking of that, what would you say to those guys that have had that sort of Junior Worlds taken away from them altogether?
Well, I mean, if I look back to myself and my time at Junior Worlds, I mean, I went through 2 campaigns and both of them didn't work out too successful for me. Yeah. But, you know, we plugged away and we carried on and pushed into some of the senior stuff. And then once I got into the senior stuff, it was like that Junior Worlds moment was only a small part of from where I am now, from my career so far. So I wouldn't hang all your hopes on the Junior Worlds. There's many more doors to open behind the Junior Worlds going forward. So if you're missing out on it now, it's pretty upsetting, pretty hard to take. But you know, there's definitely going to be more doors to walk through when you get time to get through all this.
Nice.
Tom, there's a race that I've never actually had a chance to ask you about, and I remember, 2014 World Champs. I was in the lounge screaming at the TV. I don't think I was the only Southlander doing that at the time. I mean, were you you ended up with the silver medal, but you were the strongest bike rider in that race, weren't you?
There'll be Colombia, the track worlds in Colombia, I guess. Yeah. I mean, I'd had a good summer on the track actually, and building up towards the World Champs, and we were off to Cali in Colombia, and I was going really well. You know, it was the start of the big build up for the Commonwealth Games, and it was when I came back to the track actually, after being a few years away on the road. So, you know, I went away to the road and come back bigger and stronger, and said, right, now's the time to really hit it on the track, and started training really hard, really properly, and you know, it was all going well. So it's not, again, like you come back to the Junior Worlds there, it's like, had I two unsuccessful attempts at the Junior Worlds, and you would have written off, you know, World Champ medal 3 or 4 years later down the track on the track. So I was pretty stoked with how things were going there, that's for sure.
And obviously later in that year, and you know, it was an honour to be in Glasgow, and it looked like, you know, the team just had a great time, and you and your good friend Shane Archbold were you know, rode for each other a lot. You managed to ride each other into a gold medal. That must have been a special time. Yeah,
that was really special time. We even roomed together. It's spent a lot of time with Shane over the years, different campaigns and different trips around the world. So when they put us in the room together, it was pretty awesome. And then we were talking about it, just, you know, sitting on our beds at night going, what's going to happen in the race? Okay, I'm going to get you from here to here. And once I'm there, you'll know that I'll be done. So you'll be able to take over and do what you have to do. And, you know, it was my turn the first night. And then a night later, we're racing for Shane in the scratch race. So really special time.
Hey, and Tom, and going back to that World Champs and stuff, like I said, that silver medal, how cool was it to sit there these years later and watch Mr. Corbin Strong doing the same thing from the same track in Invercargill? That must have been pretty cool.
Oh man, like that's really cool. I sent him a message. I was like, that's incredible. Like, it's cool it's cool to, one thing, be on the podium, but to come home and actually win it, that's just like, as we know, the next level, and it's so much better. So yeah, I was really stoked for him, and especially, you know, well, just being a Kiwi, but also coming from Southland too, and seeing him grow up over the years too. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I was supposed to say, I love telling the story of that, you know, we'd only ever won, you know, that was the first time we won a world championship in the points race, and there was one other guy that got a silver medal as well. And where was he from? Love telling that story. So it's pretty cool, really. It's such a cool thing for the whole cycling community in South, really, and inspiring, I think, for everybody.
Yeah, it's awesome, and it just shows, you know, what Southland's been able to turn out over the years. So it's been awesome.
You've had such a, I mean, it's, as you say, it's been a bit of a roller coaster career, Tom, but you know, so many highlights, you know, and obviously there's all the grand tours and the stuff on the track, you know, what more is there to come from you?
Well, looking at it now, I had my 30th birthday this year, and so the years are slowly coming to, slowly catching up on me. I don't know, someone in my role in the team, in the World Tour team, it's like I'm a helper, I'm like a domestique. I'm not there to win the races. So, you know, so long as I'm staying fit and healthy and injury free, I can, you know, have quite an extended career. So I'd like to at least go another 5 years, whether my body lets me or not. But, you know, some guys extend it out to late 30s. But yeah, I'd at least like to go another 5 years.
And Tom, you talked about earlier about your routine and getting through that. So talk us through what your daily routine is there in your little flat, how it rolls.
Well, yeah, in those early phases there, it was we weren't even allowed outside. Like, it was supermarket only or pharmacy. So I had, like, one day a week I'd do the shopping, and I'd try and grab everything I needed for a week just in my one shop.
Yeah. To
limit my time out there in the stores and, you know, risk any infections. And then, yeah, we sort of built through that. And the last 2 weeks we've had actually been allowed outside for every second day. We're allowed to walk for 1 hour, 2 kilometres from the house. So that's been a big relief. And I built some walking into my day. Spending a lot of time on WhatsApp, calling my parents, talking to my family back home in New Zealand. Just giving a few of my mates in a similar situation a ring. Got my mate from Australia. He's down there living in Spain. He's the same as me, tucked up in an apartment. We've got another teammate down the valley. He's the same as me, just tucked up in an apartment. So we spent a couple of weeks there just sending each other memes flat out for about 2 weeks, and then we got over that. So we said, all right, no more memes. But yeah, just really checking in, finding out the news, finding out what's going on, if there's any more info for when we can maybe get outside or when the races might be back on. But yeah, they keep getting pushed back.
Nice. Tom, I know we've always talked about this. This is one of your foundation, your big rocks we talk about as your planning. So I'm real keen to see your wall planner on your wall somewhere, hanging up there that we always talk about.
Well, I haven't got a wall planner here at the moment, but there's about 15 sheets here of lists. And I seem to write a new list every day, and then like I find myself writing the same stuff on the list, and then I'm like, right, tomorrow I'm really going to cross that stuff off. So
yeah, nice. Because
yeah,
you've always talked about, is that still a massive, like you're on a grand tour, you're doing all that stuff, those basics that we learnt back in the early days in the academy and stuff, are they things you still use?
I mean, if you use a list, you can, so if you got it on the list, good chances that you're not going to forget it. So that's the last thing you want to do, is forget something, especially when you go into these big races, you know, because you're away for 3 weeks, and it's not like you just whip down to the shops after the race to grab something that you've forgotten, you know, or you've got to have it with you. So the guys actually give me a pretty hard time for how I organise my suitcases. I've got a whole lot of those little dividers you buy from Kathmandu, and everything's in its place, you know, socks in there, the shorts in there, the jerseys in there. But that sort of come to an end actually during my first tour. I was running with Taylor Finney, and he was kind of the opposite. Like, he was organised looseness. And we were going off to the team's time trial day, and team's time trial day is a little bit different because there's a heck of a lot of pressure on it. And, 3-4 days in, and he'd been laughing at my suitcase just about every day, how organised it was. It was my first tour. I didn't want to forget anything either, but team's time trial day, and he forgets his skin suit. So we're driven like an hour and a half from the hotel out to the race, and we're there for the day. We go out and do a warm-up, then we hang out in the bus, then it's race time, say 3 p.m. And there's no just an hour and a half, whip back to get the skin suit, and then whip back an hour and a half, because it wouldn't have happened. And even from the support staff, so there's too much going on. So I actually had a spare skin suit packed away in my organised bag. And Taylor ate some humble pie that day, so that was pretty funny.
Nice.
No more hard times about having an organised suitcase.
Nice. So those are like that. The organisation was always something that you prided yourself on, wasn't it? Really, and that sort of set you up, no matter what you're doing. Is there any other little things that you do that you still look after yourself really well?
Yeah, I mean, you get organised, you build yourself a plan, you put it on paper, and 9 times out of 10, if you put it on paper, you can make it happen. When that happens is up to you, but if you put it on a day, put it on a time, and then just look at it there on a bit of paper, you'll see, all right, I said I was going to do that, so I'm going to go and do that now. And that's what it's all about, whether it's a simple list or whether it's a diary or it's on an internet calendar that your coach can also see, the team can also see. It's one thing that the team's pretty big on us is having a training plan with our individual coaches or teams coaches. And the team's, sports scientists are all looking at that. So, I'm on there daily typing in stuff, how I felt, I think, or is this training block too much, or, everything like that. So when you've got it all in the plan and all organised, and you've got 3 or 4 people looking at it, like I can have, it's a lot easier to tick those boxes off and make things happen the way you want them to happen.
Far out, Tom, it's times have developed, haven't they?
Yeah. I think things have moved along a bit. So it's been pretty good, but you'd be surprised how many times I do come back to the skills I have learned, even now in this lockdown moment, about just being patient and being organised and being okay with things changing. How many times have things changed, or how many times I sit in those offices under the velodrome with you, Jason, the plan had completely changed because something had happened or the result didn't happen the way you wanted to. So it's kind of like one of those phases we're at right now. Normally we're supposed to be racing flat out right now, but here we are locked down and the world's all just changed. So just another one of those moments, and you just have to be okay with it and push those goals back a little bit and shuffle it all around.
Tom, I know the Cycling Southland members have really enjoyed the opportunity to race against you or alongside you on Zwift. It's great to have that connection back to home.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I think the first couple of weeks I got involved, and the first week was good because it was like an organised ride where no one actually got left behind. The second week I came back and it was a proper race, and I got left behind. I wasn't quite ready for it. I wasn't quite upskilled on how it all works, but it was, at the time, it was like, I thought it was a good way for me to connect with those guys if they're out there in their garages or in their living rooms on the trainer. I'm doing the same thing, so there's no reason why I can't get on and ride with them. So it was really cool that they were able to set that up.
Yeah, awesome. And we've just opened up nominations for Southland Sports Awards today. And obviously you picked up the big gong last year. A big achievement in your career?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was an awesome thing. Awesome award to receive. I think it was right before the tour. I got the phone call, and we need to make a wee video here to put up a bit of a voiceover or something it was, and sent mum and dad down. So they were most excited about it, and so was I. And that was really cool.
Hey, Tom, you mentioned that you're getting on in years a little bit, and that as well. So, what do you think of your good mate Eddie? Like I remember those early days. You know, there was the Eddie, Tom. I think it was Jess Hamill and Natalie. That program that first took those years, and it's pretty cool to see that your mate's done pretty well, but come towards the end.
Yeah, when I saw his post there the other day on Instagram, he announced his retirement. I was like, whoa, that's a bit of a shock. Like, that's, hang on, he's not supposed to retire just yet. You know, I remember starting out with him. So, yeah, I sent him a wee message and said, I just thought about what he'd been through as an athlete as well. And, you know, like when I first started down on the track in Cue Bowl, I remember he was there at my first training session with Laurie Tall and a bunch of others. So, and racing the junior tour of Southland, the Younker tour. And he even loaned me one of his bikes when my bike wasn't up to it in my first ever tour. And then, you know, it snowballed on from there. We're racing nationals together. Then we're off from World Cups together, World Champs, Commonwealth Games. And I thought that was, you know, he's had a outstanding career. So it's just awesome to be a part of, really. Share some of it with him.
So I see he was talking that he might they were interested in the bobsleigh and maybe part of that team getting the Olympics. Do you think if you were going to another sport, Tom, what do you think you'd be heading to?
Something that doesn't require a lot of effort and energy. Race, car driving, I don't know.
They might be having a cherry picking Olympics. Do you think Mum and Dad would be into that?
No, I don't know about that. I don't know what I'd be able to do. Another sport, maybe rowing.
Yeah.
Probably not a bad crossover. Have to build some arms, but the engine would be there.
Yeah, nice. And so, how are Mum and Dad coping back at home and stuff?
Mum and Dad are good. Dad's been at work. He's been deemed as a necessary worker. They're in the middle of a harvest in the vineyard he's working for now. Mum's pretty much retired, so she's been at home just hanging out anyway.
Nice.
Dad took a bit of a shock. He had to go to the supermarket and do the groceries there for a few weeks. But they're doing well. We actually just sold the orchard just before when I come home last time in October last year. So that was a big step for them. And it's a good time for them to sell it too. So they're all pretty happy, but it's a big part of their lives for sure.
Now, that coming home is an interesting thing, isn't it? Because you're only allowed so many days a year, isn't it? How does that work, Tom?
Well, I can come home for as many days as I want, but it gets a bit messy with where I am here now with the residency thing. So I've just been X amount of days here and changed to, I think after this first year, it's a lot slacker. It's just in this first year that I'm now resident here. It's pretty tight, but 90 days here, 40 days there. And well, the rest of the time I'm floating around everywhere else. So it's pretty easy to tick off that. But it was a quick trip when I was home last time.
Yeah.
The brother's wedding was pretty cool. They chose the date for a date that I'd be able to get home for it amongst the racing season. So that was cool. It was a week flat out moving everything off the cherry orchard the week before. And then the week of was building a wedding venue at home with Mum and Dad. So it was 2 weeks flat out. And I was pretty tired after all that. So then shot back off to Europe to get started again.
That must have been nice because it's pretty hard as a professional athlete, isn't it, to miss out on those family stuff from time to time? Or often, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the nature of the cycling, you know, like the season for us is here in Europe. Sometimes the racing in America, not that I do too much of that, but, you know, once you've got your setups here and everything in place, you know, all your equipment, you know, the routines you go through on a day-to-day basis, we go into the gym and the roads you go and training on. It's really easy to have that in one place and not try and cart it all the way back home too. So that's kind of the way I've set it up now. Unfortunately, it does mean that I do miss out a lot of those family things, but you know, that's where the family support, family and friends have been pretty awesome. And they said, well, you won't be doing it forever. So get over there and do it now while you can. And when it's all said and done, you can come back and spend as much time here as you like. So.
Nice.
And Tom, I've been following Sam and George's podcast. I don't know if you've been tuning into that one, but there is talk that the Kiwi boys, they might have to start chasing races depending on how the calendar opens up. Could we see you back for the tour?
Well, actually, this year, sorry, I have been following their podcasts, and I did think the first episode was pretty funny. Also, the second. So, yeah, that's been pretty awesome. But the tour, when they do decide on a date, I mean, I think they've just pushed it back again. But actually, this year, 2020, I wasn't on the roster just by the nature of the course. There was climbs in the first week, like proper mountain climbs. So the GC for the overall contenders would be all settled, like the gaps would start to settle. Then the second week, there was going to be a bit of flat and a bit of crosswind, but then there was going to be more mountains later on. So also there's no team's time trial. So I wasn't required because the team was shaping up to send a lot of climbers to the tour this year. So it was going to be a big spring campaign. And then once the spring campaign was over, we were going to see where the cards had fallen and replan the second half of the year. Now, I think we're just still replanning at the moment. So no tour for me this year. But if they do hold the Giro or the Vuelta later on, I'll definitely be putting my hand up for one of those, that's for sure.
So probably unlikely that you might slip home, Tour of Southland, Road Nationals, that sort of thing?
Good chance. I have to work out when Road Nationals. I think they're back in February again now. But Tour of Southland, yeah, for sure. I think it'll depend on how the season plays out later in the year, if it does play out. And but I think, from what I understand, 2021, the Tour Down Under block will take place, and then Nationals is straight after that. So maybe I'll line up for that this coming year.
Nice. Now you mentioned your good mate Novi before. So is he's hanging around somewhere over there too? Is he? You guys still in contact regularly?
Yeah. He's down in Girona in Spain. I've been speaking to him most days as well. So we've been keeping each other sane and just laughing at other people on the internet, and having a good laugh, and probably talked to him more on the phone this last couple of weeks than I have living in the same town as him. So it's been good.
Yeah, definitely good for your mood, I imagine. That's for sure. When you're when it's flowing up and down as it can do and this sort of stuff, he's always good for a laugh.
Yeah, it's quite funny, like how I said before, I had a bit of a wobble, but then like 3 days later, I'm ringing my mate, and he's like, "Yeah, I was feeling the same." And then I ring my other mate, "Yeah, he's feeling the same." It's a funny thing when you've just got to be locked inside for such a long time when you've been out for so long. So used to being out for so long. So yeah, it's about having those mates around you that you can lean on from time to time.
Yeah, it's interesting over here in rugby, and they're starting to get, and netball starting to look at getting those things going in, Tom, and getting a sort of return to play plan, because obviously you've been sitting inside for so long. What's the team? Have you guys got a plan about how you start to gradually build back up, or is it what's the sort of talk around that?
So for us, it's quite strange because we've got we're not all in the same place. Like, we've got teammates in Colombia, we've got teammates in the States. Teammates in Germany, Holland, Belgium, Spain, Italy. So for us, it's really dependent on what the national, the governments are saying, and what the rules are for people in those countries, sports people in those countries can do. This week here, they've just allowed us outside to be exercising on the road as professionals, but it's 3 times a week, and it's 2 hours at a time maximum. So that's 6 hours a week. And then, normally a good training week for us would be anything from 25 hours, even plus, So whilst we're allowed outside to exercise, it's definitely not training, but we just got to take it one step at a time. I think the team's already talking that the guys who have been like in strict lockdown, like the guys in Spain here, Andorra, Italy, they'll definitely be racing later in the year once the calendar does reform, like later, like October, November sort of thing. because we'll be a fair way behind. Whereas, if you look at my teammate in Germany, he's still out there doing 6-hour rides, and it's like life's kind of normal for him. So it's very, very vast between the riders.
Yeah. Hey, the other question I had was around, I guess before things changed, was the Olympic Games and where that sort of had fit into your planning or thoughts or stuff, because there's obviously some opportunities around the road and stuff. Where were you sitting around that, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I had a quick look at the course in the early days, and we worked out pretty fast. It's a George Bennett sort of course and not a Tom Scully sort of course.
Yeah.
So right from the outset, I said, look, my role will, I won't have much of a role, even in a support role for someone like George. So I just got to roll with this one and say it's not for me this time around. Basically, just the hills are too steep and too long, and that's fine. That's why it gets stuck into all the goals that my team's got for me in the meantime, anyway.
Mm-hmm. But still something you'd like to do on the radar? That's something that's still there? Yeah,
for sure. I think the next sort of major competition or event that I'd probably like to put my hand up for or target towards would be not the road worlds this year, but the road worlds the following year in Belgium. And all those roads that we race in the spring classics, the cobblestone climbs, the small punchy hills, the flatlands, the crosswinds. So that's something that's going to be right up my alley. Not so much up George Bennett's alley, for instance. So that would be my next major campaign I'd like to build towards.
Tom, those classics in Belgium. I mean, Paris-Roubaix, those sorts of Forest of Arenberg going through. I mean, the cobblestone. I mean, it looks horrific, but you love it, don't you?
I mean, it's definitely a certain type of rider that it suits. Me being a bigger framed bike rider, I'm in what we call the plus 80 club, so that's plus 80 kgs. So anything that's not too steep, flat, wet, windy, doesn't really affect us too much. We don't get blown around or shifted too much, so we can keep the momentum going across those cobblestones and really get stuck into some hard racing. So yeah, I do love it, and it's a shame we only got to opening weekend this year, but right around the corner was going to be a big spring campaign, and unfortunately it was all canned. So pretty hard to take for a few of my Belgian teammates and for all of us really. But we'll wait it out, and maybe there's going to be some later in the year. Fingers crossed. But if not, next spring.
There's been a few Southland boys floating around overseas and stuff and that as well, and a few of them shot home and stuff. But there's been a few of them. Do you catch up with any of them at the races and stuff? As it goes?
I hadn't seen any of them at the races just yet, but I had heard a couple of them were in town, but then quickly flew the coop once it all started getting locked down.
Yeah. Which
for them, for those boys who are just freshly setting up, it's probably not a bad move to make. Whereas everything's sort of in place for me there now, and it's kind of like my opinion was that when the races do start, this is my job, and that's the way I look at it. And when the races do start again, which is when we don't know, but they're definitely not going to be back down there at home for me. So I figured it was best to stay in Europe and wait it out. And we're going to be rolling to summertime here pretty soon, so it'd be good to get out, do some proper good training and preparation for later on in the year when they do start.
And you're used to living in those small cramped places and little bits and pieces early days. I remember the early days up above soccer surgery. You've been practicing this for years, haven't you? Having your own little hole to hang in.
Exactly. That's sort of one thing I said to myself the other week is, here I've got underfloor heating and the roof's not leaking in 3 places. So, how good's that? All I just have to do is sit here and wait it out. So life's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, there's not Tomo downstairs to make your coffee and stuff, though. It's not quite the same, is it, really?
No, I haven't got the chat with the boys in the workshop most afternoons, so it's a bit different in that respect. But yeah, I've definitely been thinking a lot about those times lately.
Yeah, nice. Hey Tom, it's been awesome. Really, Nath, have you got to chat with?
No, that's fantastic, mate. Just great to see that you're keeping well and keeping sane in some pretty extraordinary circumstances. And I just wish you well, for when your campaign can get ramped up.
Yeah, yep. No, appreciate that. Once we get the green lights to go, I think it'll be pretty hot and hard to hold us back when the racing does start. So we'll look forward to that.
Nice.